Welcome to Wollombi. My name's Tia Cooper, and I'm here to tell you about my latest book, The Butterfly Collector. So if you're out there, please say hi and let me know where you're from. I'm talking to you from my library, research room, junk room, which is actually half full of cardboard boxes and kitchen rubbish at the moment because I've got builders here. And over here behind me, I've got some of the copies of my earlier books. So if you've got a favorite, let me know. Hi, Jessica, from Camperdown in Victoria. There's a Camperdown in Sydney, isn't there? I wonder if there's anybody else there. Jessica, have you read any of my books? Right, so I've written, here we go. Hello, Rosalind. Oh, and Leah from Adelaide. Oh, that's nice, Leah, thank you. And Noosa, oh my gosh, it's going quickly. And from the Fleurieu Peninsula, where's that? I've never been there. Gerald, you've read some of my books. And Rosalind from Perth. And Jessie Joseph in Campbelltown, Sydney. Now that name rings a bell. I think we've talked on Facebook. And somebody else from Adelaide. Good evening, Louise. Well, we seem to be getting quite a few people. This is exciting. Hello from Sydney. Hello, Carolyn. Oh, and from Wagga. Goodness me. And Mildura. Cindy Hooper, I know that name too. This is quite interesting. There's lots of names that I recognize from Facebook. Well, and Melbourne again. I think it's time, and Werribee. I think that there's enough people here to get started. So I'm here to talk to you about The Butterfly Collector. I have to hold it very carefully to try and get the title to show up. So this is my 9th full-length historical fiction. And this story, like my others, is a mixture of history and mystery and fact and fiction. The main characters are all fictional, but their lives are interwoven with real historical events and people. Now let's see. Oh my goodness me, look at all these people. You've read The Girl in the Painting, Lydia. Hi from Martins Creek. Tanya loves my books. Thank you, Tanya. That's lovely. And from Ballarat. Oh, Morpeth. I've got a map I should show you. Look, we have a map of Morpeth. So, Archer, am I pronouncing that right? Hello from Morpeth. She lives in Morpeth. And from the Blue Mountains, Bensville. I know Bensville. And you've just bought The Butterfly Collector. Hello, Helen. I hope you enjoy it. Yes, I love the cover too, Karen. Oh, and Rosalind, the guy that does the covers, his name is Darren Holt, and he's done most of the covers for my later books. And he's just brilliant. He's just so brilliant. Oh yes, and Anne Lennox from Sydney enjoyed The Fossil Hunter. Yes, I love. Oh yes, I think this is my favorite cover. I thought for a while that The Naturalist's Daughter was my favorite one, but now maybe I'm. There we go. Tanya, hello. The Naturalist's Daughter is one of your favorites. Kerry. Thank you, Kerry. You love my books. Oh, and you live in Maitland. Well, have you read The Girl in the Painting? Because that's Kerry, because that's all in Maitland. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this while we wait for a few more people to log in. So the story begins in 1922 when would-be journalist Verity Binks is anonymously sent a parcel containing a spectacular butterfly costume and an invitation to the Sydney Artists' Ball at the Town Hall. She's baffled as to where it's come from, but she's determined to attend. And it's the perfect opportunity because all of Sydney have been talking about the ball because it's the first one that's been held since the war. At the ball, she lands a juicy commission. to write the history of a reputable Sydney charity, the Treadwell Foundation. It's an institution that supports disgraced young women and their babies. The story is told as a dual timeline, like most of my others, and the 1922 timeline follows Verity's search for the link between the charity, a botanical painting of a butterfly, identical to the costume, and pretty much identical to these butterflies, and a beautiful house on the banks of the Hunter River, just outside Morpeth. And for all those people that know Morpeth, the house is fictional. It doesn't exist. I made it up. Let me have a look and see what's going on here. Hello, Kerry. I love your books. Thank you. Oh, yes, we've looked at that one. Oh, yes, you have read The Girl in the Painting and you really enjoyed it, Kerry. Good. Oh, Wendy, you haven't read any of my books yet, but I love the premise of your books. Not sure why I haven't got there. Yes, I think you should change it. And they do have beautiful covers, they do, don't they? Linda, love my books, thank you. Yes, it's really fantastic being able to set stuff in the Hunter, Linda, because when I get stuck and I don't know what to say next and I don't know what's going on, I can drive to wherever I'm supposed to be and go for a wander around and walk the paths that my characters are supposed to be walking. And it really makes it so much easier. And also you get to know the history and then you sort of find out little snippets that go on to other books. Hello, Cindy, I know that name. Cindy Hooper. You've read a few of my books and I really enjoyed them. You've got The Butterfly Collector on your TBR pile. Cheryl Stoddart, I know that name too. Your husband's bought the book to give it to you for Christmas. That's good. And you enjoyed The Fossil Hunters. That's lovely. Here's an interesting question. If someone was to pick up your books to read for the first time, what would you recommend to read first and why? They're not in any order. They're all standalone books, and but there is a sort of a research thread that links them together. So, and that really started happening with The Naturalist's Daughter. So you could start there. But really, it doesn't matter. I think I'd be more inclined to say start with the book that takes your fancy. If you've got a thing about butterflies, read The Butterfly Collector. If you're into fossils, read The Fossil Hunters and that sort of thing. Oh, look, another book going under the Christmas tree. That's lovely, Annie. Thank you. Oh, hello, Sandra Pascoe. You devour your books, but you have to wait for your December the 23rd birthday. I have a birthday the next day. I'm not sure it's the best time in the world to have a birthday, but still. I read all your books and been waiting for your new one. Well, it's out, Robin. It's out. Cindy, the first book you read was The Woman in the Green Dress, which started your tear addiction. Excellent, 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 excellent. And here's somebody else who's read The Butterfly Collector. I'm amazed how many people have read it already, actually. Do you always know how the book is going to end? No. Hello, Karen Kerr Davies. Davies, probably. No, I never know how the book's going to end when I start to write it. It's always a bit of a movable feast. In fact, I have a rough idea what the story is going to be about. And then I sort of write my way into the characters. And I have to do a lot of the plotting around the real historical facts because I try not to change those dates. So that sort of sets it. But as to how it, oh look, we got. Sorry, don't get sidetracked. As to how it's going to end, sometimes I know, and I usually know that it's going to be a fairly happy ending, or happy for now. But it tends to change along the way sometimes. The Woman in the Green Dress didn't end the way I expected it to at all, for example, if anybody's read that. Oh, look, we're getting all these December babies. And another Christmas Eve baby. Hello, Rosalind. I'm already halfway through The Butterfly Collector, says Karen. Can't put it down. No, Morpeth, very well. Were you on? Well, if you're halfway through it, you found the map. So I hope you're enjoying the map. I do like having the map in the front. The first book that was the cartographer's secret. That's this one. I've got it here actually for another reason, and that has a map at the front of it as well. But this map was a little bit different because it was drawn by one of the characters. But I think a map's pretty cool in the front. I like it. Who else have we got there? When we read, I've got lost now. Diane, I hope I haven't missed anybody out. When we read one book by a new author, we tend to look for all the books the author has written. I do, and yes, I do that when I'm reading, particularly if I enjoy it. I often go back. I can think of a lot of authors actually that I've gone back and read their backlist, or yes, lots and lots and lots. How long did it take me to write The Butterfly Collector? It is a beautiful book. I mean, it's a beautiful book to look at. It was a lot of fun to write, actually. I've nearly finished. I should have finished, but I haven't quite. I've nearly finished my book for next year, which is due to come out in November next year. So I will. So basically, it's taken me a year to write. So once I've handed that book in, I'll start thinking about the book for 2024, if I'm going to write one. And but within that year, I have to do edits on the book that I've handed in November, so that the books sort of overlap. And so at the moment, I'm talking to a lot of people about The Butterfly Collector, but I'm also writing next year's book. And then because my books now come out in America, I also have to do some American edits. So you're sort of jumping from one book to the other, and I have to stop. I have to put a book away, because if I try and work on two books at once, I tend to get the names muddled up and all sorts of things. So yes, I guess it takes me a year to write it. You just enjoyed reading The Cartographer's Secret, Linda. Lovely. You give life to unknown characters and give voice. Oh, Tanya, that's a beautiful thing to say. Thank you. The Currency Lass. Gosh, I wrote that a long time ago. I had such fun with that. I still think the hero in The Currency Lass, Serge, is one of my favorites. Oh, no map on Kindle? Really? That's a shame. Sorry, Karen said that. I'm going to find out about that. I would have thought it would have been in there. Oh, Linda, this is interesting. You've won all my other books. They're in the Mum's Cottage volunteer library I run. Latest is great as it deals with the history of the birth of Australia. Well, that's a fascinating thing. So I'm quite interested. I think I'm going to have to find out about what the Mum's Cottage is. Which tends to hold up other books I already have and should be reading. What inspired me to write The Butterfly Collector? I can tell you the story about that, which is why I've got The Cartographer's Secret here. So if you've read The Cartographer's Secret, you'll know that it references Ludwig Leichhardt, the explorer. And because of that, when I was doing the research, I read his diaries, which are all available online. And it turned out that he'd spent some time on Ash Island, staying with the Scots family. And that sort of got me poking around about Harriet and Helena Scott and butterflies, and which I suppose was the initial inspiration for The Butterfly Collector. That's interesting. Kerry Cahill says, I have a map on my Kindle at the beginning. Yeah, I'm convinced that there was a map. I think there was some complaint because it was over 2 pages, so you couldn't push it together. But I did think that the Kindle ones had the map there. Maybe somebody else could have a look. Right, that's interesting. Yes, so the inspiration for The Butterfly Collector. So obviously there was the Scott Sisters and Ash Island, which sort of spun off The Cartographer's Secret. And then there were a few other things that that came up. And it goes back to 2019 when the bushfires were going on, and I'm a member of the bushfire brigade, and so is my next door neighbour, and we were standing watching the fire come over the hill and talking about books. And she's actually written a non-fiction book called The Baby Farmers. And I used that book as a reference book when I was writing this. I really kind of like the idea of the juxtaposition of the sort of butterflies, which are all about, you know, love and friendship and things like that, and growth and development, and really what is the horribly sad and fairly unpleasant story about baby farming. So I guess those two things were the main inspiration. And Morpeth. I love Morpeth. I've spent a lot of time in Morpeth, drinking coffee and walking up and down the river and things like that. I wanted to set a book there. I also wanted to set a book in Morpeth because all the steamboat, you know, the steamers and the history there fascinates me. And Morpeth crops up a lot in my books, because if you lived in the Hunter in the 19th century, I mean the 19th century, yes I do. In the 19th century, it was your way to Sydney. It was far quicker to go to Sydney, because you jumped on the steamer in Morpeth. Well, no, let's do it the other way around. You jumped on the steamer at 11 o'clock at night in Sydney, and you woke up in Newcastle in time for breakfast, and they tended to feed the passengers freshly caught flathead and bread. I got that from somebody's journal, and then you then kept chuffing up the river, and you were in Morpeth by 11. Whereas if you had to come overland, it took you about 3 days. So there we go. So that was another of the inspiration. And what inspires me, I'm still on Tanya's question, what inspires me is giving a voice to women in history. They may be fictional characters, but they tend to be based on real characters. I make sure that my fictional female characters don't do anything that hasn't been done by a real live woman in that period of time. So I do spend quite a lot of time on the Australian Biographical Dictionary, sort of trying to find out if there was somebody else who, well, I didn't have to do it with the Butterfly Collector because I'd got the Scots, but I try to make sure that they're not doing anything that hadn't been done by another woman. So here we are. Somebody else has got a map on their Kindle at the beginning. That's Kerry. I'd like to know whether, or I think I've already said that, haven't I? I'd like to know whether it's on 2 pages or not. Maybe I could write one about Patterson. I could write one about Patterson. I can't think of anything that particularly Oh, there's somebody else. That's Rita saying that she's got a map in her Kindle copy. Oh, it's a pleasure, Tanya, answering your question. I like answering questions. I don't know what to say now. How much historical? Yes, ask me lots of questions, because I've got completely lost about what I was going to talk about. How much historical research do you do before you write the book? Most of it, because if I'm stuck with a series of dates that I don't want to change, I've got to work the fictional timeline around the dates of the real dates. So the backstory in the Butterfly Collector is about the Breckenbridge family, and they were that's Theodora's parents, and they and her brother were killed when the Kawara steamship hit the oyster banks off Newcastle. That's true. That's fact. So I had to make sure that I was tying the story into the fictional story into the date that happened. And then there's quite a lot about it. Well, not an enormous amount, but there's stuff about it and what happened. And there was only one survivor on this wreck. And he wrote an article in the newspaper. So if you go onto Trove, you can find out and you can read the eyewitness account. So I used that in the account of that story. So the big things in the historical research are done before I start writing the book. And then, I mean, obviously, as I'm writing it, I often have to go back and check things and check the dates of things, or something else comes up and I have to go and check it. Or if I'm writing really quickly and really into the story, I put XXXXX, blah, 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 check the date and keep on going. And then I go back and do it later. Did I have to do a lot of research on butterflies? I had to do a lot of research on monarch butterflies. And it was actually, I didn't know this. I was quite fascinated by it. But so there was one landed in my garden, and I thought, oh no, I haven't seen that before. I wonder what that is. So I went and looked it up, and all of the stuff online about it was about the monarch butterflies in America. And I thought, oh, okay, well maybe that's not going to go into a story. And I jumped onto the Sydney Museum website, another one of my favorite ones. And they did have a little bit about the monarch butterfly on there, only they call it the wanderer butterfly, which apparently is what it's called here. Because, and then it got really interesting, so the monarch butterfly is not native to Australia. But in 1870, well, the spring and summer of 1870, 1871, a whole lot of them were blown from Vanuatu, where they've been sighted, to Queensland. There were areas of Africans, and they literally were blown to Australia. I was really annoyed about this because, as everybody probably knows, I like to set my books in the Hunter, and I didn't want to set a book in Queensland. And so I got onto I rang up the Sydney Museum and said, look, have you got anything else about monarch butterflies? Because there's really, in Australia, because there's really, not an awful lot of information. And they sent me an article, and I'm going to have to go and look this up so that I can I know I've got it written down here somewhere. Because two people did, so these butterflies, yes, they were first sighted in Queensland in the summer of 1870-71. But there was one line further down it was only a 2-page article, that said an unconfirmed report by Olive, and now he happened to be the entomologist at the Sydney Museum at that time, at the second half of the 19th century, stated that the butterfly had been seen years earlier, not far from Sydney, but the sighting had never been authenticated. Now, those are the kind of things I love finding in research. I really like things when it says an unconfirmed report or an unknown person, and then the story can spin off that. So in The Butterfly Collector, Theodora becomes that unknown person who had the first sighting of the monarch butterfly north of Sydney before the whole lot were blown up onto the coast of Queensland. So yes, that's how that goes. Oh my gosh. Right, so that was the research on butterflies. Tanya, thank you. I really like, it's like doing a great big jigsaw puzzle. You start off with a few bits of information, and you sort of build the frame, and then you can gradually build up the research and drop it in. 90% of the time my dining room table is covered in post-it notes. Jenny, I hope you enjoy the Butterfly Collector when you, somebody's just bought me a glass of wine. How excellent is that? I'm welcome to set one of my books in Victoria. Yes, but you see, that might not work. I mean, I could go down to Victoria, but I think I'd have to move there because the research doesn't really end, with that initial research. I'd be backwards and forwards the whole time. I suppose I could. I could have moved to Victoria for 12 months, I suppose. Anyway, Abigail, love your books here. Thank you. I like writing them. It's fun. Now, we've got about 3 or 4 more. Come for a holiday. Thank you. I think I'd have to, yeah. No, and I'm not, it's not nice when I'm writing a book. I get quite snarky, actually. You wouldn't want to see me. We've got about 5 more minutes maximum. Has anybody got any other questions? I haven't said any of the things I was going to say. Any more questions? Going. Well, I hope everybody enjoys The Butterfly Collector. And if you want to delve into my backlist, if you go onto my website, which is just tiacooperauthor.com, there's a list on there of all of the books. And there are some really early ones that are only ebooks, but the last nine are print books as well. A couple of them are a bit hard to get hold of, but Booktopia is pretty good on that, actually, particularly for the earlier ones. And the first 3 aren't dual timelines. Thank you, Ilona Young. Thank you. I like all these butterflies that are coming up here. It's been great talking to you. I hope I haven't bored everybody stupid. And enjoy The Butterfly Collector if you haven't already read it. And if you have, maybe delve back in some of the earlier ones. You might see if you can work out the chain of research that runs through the books. I'd be interested to know. And you can always, and you can always get hold of me through my website. There's a contact thing on a page which has got an email address on it. And there's also my newsletter. You can sign up to my newsletter, which doesn't come out very often. Actually, it's a very infrequent newsletter, but it does keep you up, lets you know what's going on. Okay, thanks everybody. It's been great talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I think we're going to wind it up there. Or maybe we're not.